Alrighty. Welcome, guys, to another episode of the Eden Hour podcast. I'm your host, Nifty Degenerate, or Nifty for short. And joining me today is a legend in the NFT merchandise space. He's done merch for projects such as Soul Boogle, the Watchers, and the Hotheads. And he's recently taken on a role with the Just Ape team as well. So please join me in welcoming EmbroideryBoy. What's up, man?
Hey, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
Yeah, no, dude, I appreciate you taking the time to do this. I believe it's a
Of
little
course.
early where you are. Is that right?
Yeah, it's just past 8 in the morning.
Oh,
Um,
brutal for crypto hours. I mean, that's brutal.
it's pretty kind of normal, but it is what it is.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to have you here. I'd love to just kind of hear about how you got into this crazy space, what you did before. Like, I'm gonna deep dive a little bit about
Yeah,
who is Embroidery Boy.
yeah. So I guess,
We can start with like your background outside of Web3, right? I'm curious, like what you were doing. Was it merch related back then as well, or were you doing something different?
yeah. So in a very short version, I basically like finished school, went to university for a year, loved half the subjects, hated half the subjects, and then took off a year to kind of focus in on what I was really interested in. And at that time, it was electronic music. And naturally, I think um, when you're really interested in like the arts or in the music or something like that, you want to make it, right? And so I spent kind of like half a year really throwing myself into making that sort of stuff and spending a lot of time like researching and learning how to get better, I guess. And I got to a point where I felt like there was just some things that were like not connecting or kind of missing. And it reached a point where I was like, well, if I'm going to sort of find out how this really is, then I'm going to have to ask people like face to face. And I kind of came up with this idea to go around the world and spend time with a bunch of like electronic producers and musicians and stuff in their studios and with them and experience what their lives were actually like, because I felt like there was a disparity between like the interviews and the documentaries and stuff and like
Sure.
real life living and what I was experiencing. um, so I kind of came up with an idea to create this documentary around it, to have them on board and like have have it be worth their time as well, right? Because everyone wants something from them and kind of would offer nothing back.
And can I stop
Um,
you real quick? Just curious,
yeah,
how did you make these connections? How are you getting connected with these people? Because obviously artists sometimes are hard to reach. People pitch them a lot of stuff. I'm sure your pitch was pretty enticing, but just curious how you made those connections.
yeah. I mean, so I think there was two major things was timing, and then also like, um, I guess definitely how I went about it. So timing being like it was during the 2013, 2014 era of like Facebook, and Instagram was still like ish coming up, and these musicians and that whole space, the whole social media space. um, you're right, people got offers and stuff all the time, but it was still at a point where like, a lot of them read their DMs, a lot of them read their emails and stuff like that. So
Right.
a good half of it was research into like finding the right email addresses for contact forms, and like contact that based on the email address you could sort of deduce if they would get it as an artist or if management would get it, that sort of thing.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And then the second part of that was obviously how I went about um, asking. Um, and that was very much formulated in a way where kind of like I started by talking about like a little bit about like who I was, like what I'd been kind of going through, what I was trying to achieve, and then how they could be involved in something that they would be able to like show their fans.
Right.
And so it was more like me offering them something rather than me asking them anything. And I also was offering a different perspective, because I was basically saying, I don't want to interview you. I don't want to ask you the same questions you've answered 100 times. Like, I just want to spend time with you and your family or friends in the studio and get a feel for you. And that's it.
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's a lot easier for them to like offer up their time, because really they didn't have to do anything and they got something out of it.
Right. Right. No,
So
that's a great pitch. Okay.
yeah, so then basically I got like 9 out of 10 of people I reached out to said
Wow.
yes, which was like surprisingly high. But these
Incredible.
were
Yeah.
people throughout like Australia, Europe, US, and Canada.
Hmm.
And so then I spent a year at the snow, working, and then I did like a wine season, just like saving money for the whole trip,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
then organized it all out, and then spent 3 months kind of going around the world, and just hanging out with these guys and recording it. And then
Incredible.
after that was done, I spent a year editing it because I didn't come from a background in like video or anything like that. So I'd
Mhm.
essentially kind of got my first camera, and then I went and saw the first guy and actually like messed up half the footage. Like the microphone was plugged in, but it wasn't on. So like half the audio was gone and stuff like that.
Oh, dude, I
So
have such fear with this podcast too. Like, my biggest fear is I'm gonna get through like an excellent podcast, and I didn't end up recording it. So like, I'm always checking
yeah,
to make sure it's recording, and no, so I feel
yeah.
you. Like, like you have to kind of dive in, but at the same time, it's super scary.
I was doing a lot of learning along the way, and
Hmm.
so that guy, the first one, I actually ended up even coming back right again at the end because of how much footage I'd messed up with him. But it took me a year to edit the whole thing because I remade it like 4 times. It was kind of around 25 to 20 minutes long. And every time I finished it, I'd learned so much along the way that I
Yeah.
needed to redo it.
Yeah.
Like I just got way better at comping vocals, or like, transitioning things, or incorporating like the background music, stuff like that. Um, and one group in particular had been like really, I guess, helpful. Like probably 60% of them I'd stayed good friends with afterwards, but one I'd stayed in constant contact, and they were putting me in contact with like different industry people for like blogs and stuff like that, because like all of these artists had a vested interest in this video doing well as well, right? um, and yeah, so at the end of that year when it was finally done, I went back and visited them and was just kind of in with them in their studio, and sat in on a meeting that we're having, and they were like, "Oh man, I wish we had this guy who could like kind of do this and this and this for us, but like we're not quite ready to bring on someone like full time, like meet us where we're at, but like grow with us, and that sort of thing." And I was kind of like, like
Yeah.
what about me? And they're like,
Right.
"Oh yeah." And so at that point they just started like handing over a bunch of stuff for like 2 months. They said like, "You don't need to do anything, like here's all our email access, everything, like just read and learn who people are, our managers, tour managers, like booking agents, all that sort of stuff, and just get a feel for like what this is." And then they started handing over different responsibilities, and then I kind of, I guess, officially joined the team, and that slowly grew into a role which we now call like creative direction, I guess,
I
because
see.
I found a lot more. I enjoyed a lot of the creative stuff rather than necessarily like marketing strategy and that sort of thing.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, right. I've been with them for like almost 5 years now, and right before Corona hit, I was I'd kind of spent a year really trying to hone in some creative skills, particularly like digital painting and stuff. And um, I got to the end of the year, and that was a really, really big year for us, actually. So it was quite uh, creatively draining on my part, but I
Sure.
still felt I wanted to be creating stuff outside of work. So I needed an outlet that was creative, that wasn't tied to my work. And at the time, I was spending a lot of money on like one of one clothes, I guess. I've been into streetwear for quite a while,
Sure. Yeah.
and
Same.
there was a bit of a movement happening where people were making like individual pieces. They're essentially doing art on clothes, right?
Hmm.
Um, and selling them. And I started buying a few, and obviously they were pretty expensive.
Sure. Yeah.
And I, yeah, I bought a few, and I honestly was like pretty disappointed in the quality of what I was getting. And it kind of was a bit of a crossover where I was like, I reckon I could do better than this.
Mhm.
So I actually bought my own embroidery machine at the end of 2019, and bought the software and started talking regularly with one of the guys I'd bought some stuff from, and because he was also always very vocal about like teaching people and being very helpful and that sort of stuff, very kind of community focused around building his
Incredible.
brand and sharing knowledge and that sort of stuff. And so
Mhm.
he taught me a lot about digitizing at the start. And then I just kind of took it and ran from there, because I've always, I guess, been a bit more digitally inclined as well. And so having the freedom to be able to really like make whatever you want on your clothes on the computer first, it's like 90% programming and then 10% like maintenance and setting it up and all of that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
So that's how I got into clothes. And then naturally that kind of extended into like my other role, where I started doing merchandising for that artist, and learning a lot about the scale that they work on and the different standards and stuff that they need to work on. And my involvement with crypto and NFTs sort of was like running parallel. I think my interest in crypto was maybe around mid 2020, and it was purely just of like what you see online, right? You start
Mhm.
seeing more YouTube videos or like TikTok, and people being like, now's the time to get into crypto,
Yeah.
like buy this. And so you start messing around, and I like didn't have really much money to like throw into that stuff, because at this point been essentially working for myself for like 3 years. Because I was just kind of like, for the most part, full time with this group that's overseas. And so I'd been working from home and didn't really have like 10 years of capital saved up or whatever
Of course.
to
Right.
like
Right.
throw into this stuff. So I obviously missed like the 2018 2019 sort of runs and all of that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
So kind of, the interest in crypto is the same as everyone else's interest. Is like kind of the gains and the excitement and the volatility, but I didn't
Yeah.
really have any of the capital to play with it, so it was very
Mhm.
kind of sideways.
Yeah. 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 I know
And
how that goes.
then yeah, and then similar thing for NFTs. I was just like seeing it on TikTok a lot, um, and that one artist who helped me a lot with like learning about digitizing very early in the day, he actually released his own um, NFT as part of one of his like clothing collections. And basically it was like, if you own one of these, you get to pick anything you want from like every collection that comes out in the future, and you get it for free essentially.
Oh,
So
that's cool.
like, yeah, so I bought one of them kind of because for a while, like there was a couple clothing guys I got pretty involved with, and I really wanted to support them, essentially invest in them, but like, I wasn't sure how to do that, since I didn't have capital for that sort of stuff. Even if I did, like, what would they do with it, So this was kind of a perfect way for me to support him, and also like regularly get new clothes from him and that sort of stuff.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, so that was on Ethereum, and this was during kind of like the days of the gas wars, when like maybe like a month before like Mechas came out, and gas was like hundreds of dollars to up to 1,000 at some point.
Oh, yeah.
And
So
yeah,
I was trading around
sorry.
that time as well, and so like I know like I didn't have much capital back then either, and yeah, like the gas used to cost as much as the NFT sometimes, and it was insanity. I ended up
Yeah,
minting a mecha, by the way, so like versus close to my
yes,
heart.
it it was just like I was instantly priced out, right?
Yeah, sure.
And I think the the way I got to Solana was I actually followed the guy who bought the first edition of my friend's NFT. I bought the third one. He actually bought the first two.
Oh,
And the
wow.
fact that he bought two, I was like, okay, like obviously sees the value here, whatever. And then I like went over his Twitter. He actually kind of had a bit of a following, but was one of those guys that had a following, but like kind of didn't talk much.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Someone who kind of like always seemed to be involved in projects like before they were happening, and like with actual real world skilled people rather than just like shit posting all day. And then he so I followed him and just was kind of like watching what he was doing and paying attention to. And I think at some point it crossed over with him with like a Solana influencer, and or just like someone on Solana that had like a decent following.
Yeah,
And I kind of like hopped over there and checked that out, and then
yeah.
obviously discovered like how it worked and that I could actually afford to be involved, and that
Yeah, yeah,
I didn't have to basically like gamble all my money on like one mint.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. No, I know how
and
that is.
then yeah, and then just kind of like started playing around with that, minted my first project, which was like naturally a rug.
Okay, right.
But like you didn't find that out till like 4 months later.
Yeah, yeah, right.
And this was in like September, I would
Hmm.
say.
So that's
But
early
I'm
for Solana. I want to say,
right. Okay.
based on my experience, most of the people I know crossed over into Solana or started discovering Solana around December, maybe November.
Right.
But you
Okay.
got to think Boryoku Dragons minting in November, right? So it's
Right.
like,
Okay.
September is pretty early. So it seems like you got in at a good time.
Yeah. So yeah, it was definitely a very exciting time, and like for a lot of learning and stuff. And
Yeah.
I basically, that first one that I bought, I digitized and sewed it out on a hoodie of mine. And then I
Mm.
showed it to the Discord, and everyone was like, dude, I need one of these.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
can you do mine? And at that point, it was kind of like a bit of a light bulb. And I was like, damn, I could do this for everyone.
Hmm.
And at that point, I pretty much like threw myself into like, I guess, doing as many customs as possible, expanding like the styles that I could do, and also like really honing in the quality of like what I was putting out by not putting restraints, but making the whole process like more efficient,
Hmm.
reusing settings, all that sort of stuff. So then I could be really consistent. And I kind of did that for probably like 2 months, and then was very lucky that I um, almost had too much work that I could do.
Yeah,
And
incredible.
so I wanted to like, but I also had more that I wanted to do. I didn't just want to make customs every day, because it is like, um, there's a reason they're not really available. Most, I would say 99% of decorating businesses are set up for bulk orders, right? They're
Hmm.
set up to do high quantities at low prices, because the machinery they have is also set up that way. Um, it's set up to do, like 8 or 16 of the same thing at once. And that
Right.
is the total opposite to doing one design
What?
on
Of
one
course.
thing and then moving on.
Yeah.
So I kind of felt like there was a bit of a niche there where my like experience, because at that point, I guess I kind of skipped that part, but at this point when I got into crypto, I'd been doing the streetwear thing for like 2-3 years.
Well.
So there was, during that period, I kind of had my own project. I never wanted a brand. I guess I had a project where clothes was the medium, and like I was the artist. and
Incredible.
and
I love
and it
that.
was built that way because like I wanted to do whatever I wanted to do at any point in time and
You're
just like
right.
put it out, rather than like have a brand which is more so built around like a certain idea or a certain like imagery and stuff like that. Because I felt like that was quite restricting for at least what I wanted to do. And I got into it originally as a creative outlet, right?
Yeah.
Not because I needed a second job.
Right,
I
right, right.
already wanted to, I wanted that creative freedom. And as
Incredible.
soon as it started becoming a bit of a job, I always had to like reel it back and be like, no, whenever I was worried about, my followers aren't like growing fast enough, stuff like that. I was like,
Mhm.
dude, you started this because you wanted like an outlet, not because you wanted to like be the next big brand, right?
Yeah, right. No, the passion goes away
Um,
sometimes when you scale in that way. You know what I mean? Like, I'm like a really passionate cook. I went to culinary school, but
mm,
then like I worked in the industry for like a year, maybe like 6 months, and it was like, dude, I hate this. Like it, like when
yeah,
you're like grinding away, the passion kind of goes away. Like, so I totally understand how that goes. And
yeah,
you gotta kind of step back and be like, do I want to do this? Where it's like a job and a chore, or is it something that I want to spend time being passionate about and being creative about? It's totally a different thing, right?
exactly. And then so that's when kind of when the customs took over, it was very exciting in terms of like opportunity and being pushed to do a lot of different styles and that sort of thing. And also like it took away a little bit of the I guess took away a little bit of the creative requirement of me just sitting down and being like, what do I want to do today? Because like people were telling me what they wanted. It was more like finding out how to get there and best represent it in thread form, I guess,
Yeah.
um, which is very different. It, I guess, a skill in and of itself. Like a lot of people assume embroidery is just like printing, where it's like
Yeah.
you give it a picture and click go. Like it's it's a manual process. Like just like anything, digitizing has some automatic processes if you want to use them, but 90% of the time you waste more time fixing what it couldn't get right than you save from just doing it like yourself.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I hate how that works.
um, yeah, and so I kind of capped out at like how many customs I could like do a day or do a week. But I wanted to like keep growing it. So and offering different things because I didn't want to just do embroidery. I was like more interested in merchandising and also at the same time working with this artist. Like they're looking to do different things too. They want to
Right.
do all sorts of accessories or whatever. And so I was kind of like growing these skills in tandem, we're helping each other.
Which, by the
Um,
way, I mean, I wanna emphasize that a little bit. I mean, not only did you teach yourself kind of videography and documentary making and editing, then you transitioned from that into embroidery and custom clothing. I mean, it's very special. I don't think a lot of people can do that. It just feels like in your mind you're this creative and you were looking for these outlets, right? And so you taught yourself essentially how to utilize these outlets. But I mean, it's incredible. I'm like, I'm kind of in awe as you're going on, like and especially like it's not a long time, right? That we're talking. This is a very quick progression. You're getting into this essentially right after school. I mean, it's very cool what you've been able to do. And by the way, I
Thank
wanted
you.
to ask: is there somewhere we can see the documentary? I mean, should I be linking this in the video post, or
I don't know. It's on
I'd love to.
YouTube. It's called In Perspective. I'm not sure if it'll come up immediately, but it'll be kind of probably semi-obvious. It's got like, I don't know, 2,000, 3,000 views or something
Let's
like that.
go. Let's go. That's sick.
But yeah, might even
Dude, I'll
see if
link
a
it, man.
lot of it
No,
probably recognize or not. Um,
yeah, I'm not a huge EDM guy. My brother, who's Diablo, I think you've
yeah,
spoken with Diablo. He is, so I'm sure he'll
yeah.
be keen. But I'd love to link it, and I'm gonna check it out. I mean, it's incredible that like again, I was saying like not all artists are gonna be open to working with somebody. I mean, yes, you were early, but still, like it sounds like the pitch and the value add you gave to them was impressive, and then like it's cool that like you were just figuring it out, you know what I mean? And you made it happen. And you've got a video posted with thousands of views. Like that's cool, man. That's like I don't know if it's dawned on you. I feel like you're a little humble about it, but like that's incredible. That's really cool.
Yeah, it was definitely like a really important part of my life and like wasn't super easy at a lot of points. Like
Sure.
obviously just like everyone else, like maybe your parents are like, "Whoa, what are you doing?" Like
Yeah.
luckily mine were like relatively supportive in kind of the time frame that I made it work under, right?
Right.
They were kind of like, "Oh, I don't know about this," but like give you sort of the space to do it and
Yeah.
explore it. And I
Yeah.
guess my parents probably value the most I guess, responsibility. So I was that they could still really respect the fact that I was like going and doing work to be able to like pay for it. I was doing work I didn't want to do and earning money to be able to fund these things and whatever. I wasn't
Sure, my
like
parents are the same way.
sitting at home like taking their money and stuff like that.
Right, right.
So but like I said, it took a year to edit it. So there was a lot of times where I was like, is this going to come out? Is it going to come out and no one will care? Like, did I just waste 2 years?
That's scary. I can't even imagine
Yeah,
how that
it was
felt.
tough.
Yeah.
But yeah, got through that. Um, I guess, yeah, linking back, I naturally, I kind of want to push things as far as possible. Um, just like I did kind of with the doc and getting into that area of music and stuff. And so when things started ramping up for customs and for Embroidery Boy, I wanted to move into offering different things. And that's when I transitioned into partnering with a few different, I guess, one-of-one artists or projects that were doing one-of-one art with a limited cap. So
Right.
this was, I can't quite remember the time frame, maybe like December, that sort of thing, when a lot of projects started coming out as like weekly or fortnightly auctions. We've got 100 pieces or 64, something like that. And so I was able to partner with a few, and it kind of gave the security and regularity to one side of it, where I would do the customs for the winner of that piece every single week.
Yeah.
And still doing it now. Like all 4 of those partnerships are ongoing, but like
Yeah.
you can kind of expect you can plan for the work, right? Because it's regular. Whereas the 2 months beforehand, like I had some really great days where there was too much, and then a week where like not really many people were interested, that sort of
Sure.
thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I transitioned into that, and a big part of that too was the service was also an ongoing sampling service. So I was essentially sampling new products for them that can be, that they could make for their holders and that sort of stuff as part of like the fee that I was getting, and would do that on my own volition, and basically come to them and be like, look, I sampled this, like, do you like it? And if they didn't, then I would go sample something else. If they did, then they would pay for a run, and we would, distribute it to their holders and that sort of stuff. So
Which is a
thing,
fantastic idea, by the way. I mean, I love that you are like trying to be agile and kind of evolve your offerings. Obviously, that's really
yeah,
important in this space. So incredible.
yeah, because I mean, same. There's a lot of parallels that I drew between like artists in this space and in music. Like everyone wants to stand out, do something different. Everyone wants to like offer something new, but a lot of the time, the artist doesn't really have time to think of that stuff. They just want to do their art,
Yeah.
and so I was essentially offering like the thinking work for that. Like they didn't have to come to me and like, oh, dude, I want to do like jewelry or something. I would just do it anyway, and it would be covered under like our arrangement, and then I can show them stuff. It's very different to like have stuff sampled and done and show it to them, and then they can make a decision if they want to like make more,
Of course. Yeah.
versus just like the idea, you know. So that was essentially how I moved into the next, I guess, stage 2 of like what Embroidery Boy was. And then one of the particular artists like started spearheading, I guess, making bulk for that extra stuff.
Oh, cool.
So I started making, like, one of the things I sampled was some gaming mats for Zeno, the first guy that I partnered with, and those went really well. And he wanted to build out like his own store with a bunch of different apparel. And so then one of the big problems with scaling out was logistics of like fulfillment, right?
Of
So like
course.
shipping to everyone.
Because
And then that,
you're in Australia, is that correct?
yeah,
In
I'm in
Australia.
Australia. So
Yeah.
um, I guess it's a problem everywhere in the world. The added problem being in Australia is like a little bit of cost, but it's like not too bad depending on how you play it. But
Mhm.
the biggest problem is essentially managing the logistics. So like, how do you receive the orders and how do you fulfill them and like keep track of them?
Mhm.
And he wanted to build his own store out, and was like, "Do you want to be a part of this?" I was like, "Absolutely." And so that that's kind of what I've been transitioning it to into phase three, is like slowing down a little bit on sort of the custom stuff, because as much as I want to keep doing them and like doing them, there's only so much I can kind of um, automate's the wrong word, but like pass along. It's very, I would say it's like it's a it's a skilled part of the job, and there would be very little people I would trust to be able to maintain that level of quality
Right.
based on the custom work.
Right,
Um,
and like you were saying, there's a little bit of automation that can go into this embroidery stuff, but a lot of it is manual. So it seems like it's a bit of an art form. I don't think, like you
exactly,
said, not everybody can pick up on stuff like that.
exactly. Like, I've been able to get assistance on like parts here and there, but I've also like developed out how I went about it to make it more efficient. Like, I used to stitch things out like multiple times for testing and stuff like that, but I was able to kind of make a format that I could trim that down, like make things more consistent, all of that sort of stuff. But
This is
it
so
kind of gets
incredible.
to a point.
It's incredible to hear all the thought and stuff that you put into this again, because this is not your traditional background, and I mean, it all makes sense, right? Like when people are going to be hear this and say like, yeah, why wouldn't you kind of test this and what? But like to just do this organically and kind of like I just feel like you've got this like system nailed down, which is really incredible, because I think that's like one of the hardest parts, right? Is like getting a system to where you can like get assistance on stuff, but still maintain the quality. And so like scaling and all that kind of thing, I feel like if you're native to like merchandise and clothing, it'll make sense. But like you're coming up
Yeah.
with this as you go, which is again, I'm gonna keep repeating this word. It's incredible. And for someone who's like not good at that stuff, especially, like I'm very impressed. Like it's very good.
Thank you. I'm very, I guess I'm very analytical and like
It's
really
important. Yeah.
almost obsessed with like making things efficient and that sort of thing. And so
Mhm.
um, there's a lot of things I learned from being in music and in the clothing side too, and things that don't come naturally to me. So a lot of what was frustrating in being in streetwear is I seem to see brands doing way better than maybe other ones that I thought deserved to be a little bit more recognize that sort of stuff, because it's like, damn, like the quality of this is way better than theirs. Like, why are they doing blah blah blah? But
Okay.
like,
Yeah.
you kind of realize that like people don't think the same way that you do, and just because just because you can see the value in XYZ doesn't mean they can or care. And so you really have to kind of meet people with where they're at. And I kind of came to a realization that the brands that did the best, in my opinion, were the ones that like were sort of in the middle. It was
Mhm.
all about momentum and quality control. So there was plenty of brands that, and this isn't like hard and fast. Obviously, there's outliers everywhere, but the
Well, it's
brands
funny
that
because
had, sorry,
sorry to cut you off, but it's funny you're mentioning all this, and I'm just thinking back to parallels of like the NFT space, right? There's a
mm,
lot of projects. I'll talk to project founders, and it's like they'll be like, "Oh, I don't understand why some of these projects are doing so well. I've put in X, Y, Z amount of hours. I've built X, I've built all this out. I just don't understand it." And so, like you said, you kind of have to meet in the middle, right? Some of it is that like
yeah,
momentum or hype or whatever, and then the other half is the quality.
and
Unfortunately, I
this
mean,
is
it'd be great
it,
if it was just quality based, right? You know what I mean?
it's very evident across every art space. Like, most
Mm.
prevalent initially for me in music, where there's guys just like, dude, this guy's so talented, no one cares. This
Yeah.
guy
Oh,
sucks, like everyone cares. And you can either fight against that or you can like embrace it and understand that you kind of have to work with both.
Yeah, it's just the
You got to
space that
put it,
we're in, right?
yeah, you got to put aside the entitlement to it. I think
Hmm,
it's
hmm.
like in art across the board, there's a lot of entitlement where people think like I've worked the hardest, so like I deserve the fame and whatever.
Right.
But like honestly, no one owes you anything. And like
Agreed.
you're choosing to be here. And I kind of think of it as like maybe a spectrum with a few different examples I'll try and give along the way. Like there's that person maybe far over this side that absolutely sold out. They're doing whatever they need to do to like make money, what's popular, all of that sort of stuff.
Sure. Hmm.
And for them, it's probably like, well, I don't care about artistic integrity.
Hmm.
I just want money.
Hmm.
And then all the way on the other side, you've got that weird guy that has flip flops and he's like smacking on pipes in the middle of the street, and he's actually incredible,
Yeah.
actually very talented, but like no one cares.
Hmm.
He just gets spare change and that sort of stuff. And for me, it's kind of about the attitude. There's guys all the way on that side making no money, actually incredible, and they're like, oh, like why don't people care, blah 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 blah.
Yes.
But then there's guys that are just like, no, like I love what I'm doing and I'm going to do it regardless of if I'm making money from it or if I'm not.
Yes.
Um, and and on the other side is perfectly fine too. I think it's
Agreed.
perfectly, like I've met artists who are like, who I was like, oh, how'd you get into music? And they were like, oh, well, honestly, like the money was really alluring and stuff. And I was like, I'm not with you on that, but like I respect that
Hmm.
that's your goal and you can be like honest about it. And then we
Yeah.
can actually work together on things because I know what you're trying to achieve and like I can help you get there. Whereas when people are disingenuous about how they're trying to get somewhere, or honestly, if they're even lying to themselves,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
a lot harder to help them achieve what they want to achieve, right?
Agreed. Yeah.
Um, and so I think it's important to just kind of like take the ego out of it, take the entitlement out of it, because especially in art, no one owes you anything because like no one really, I guess, decides like what's interesting right now or what's popular right now and whatever. So whenever people are like, oh, I did all this and then like no one cared, to me it's kind of, I get that it's frustrating, like I get that it's tough making stuff that people don't like or it isn't received well or
Yeah. Of
whatever,
course. Can't be easy.
but you got to make a decision, like are you in here to make money or are you in here to like make what you want to make? And it's okay to be in the middle as well.
Hmm.
Like there's plenty
Totally
of
agree.
musicians who um they make their own thing and they do their own thing, but they also do writing for other people or they do coaching or whatever, and they do that on the side. Sometimes, especially when I was going through all my stuff in the last 5 years, we're kind of sold this dream that like you have to be 100% in and that's it. And like if you're 100% in, then it'll work out and people like owe it to you that because you've chosen what to do, like you should be paid for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like sorry, but like
Yeah.
if there's no market, there's no market.
Right. Right.
um and that's where it really comes down to, yeah, like what are you trying to get out of it, and what do you value? Is this something that you're going to do if you had no money? Is this
Exactly.
something that you're only going to do if you had a little bit?
Yeah, and I
um
really respect people who can kind of pivot, right? It's like, okay, what I'm doing is not working. Maybe I need to go closer to the middle or further to the left. Like people who are able to pivot, even though it's not ideal, generally I find will eventually find success. It's all about staying agile.
yeah, absolutely. And I think for me in this space now, my priority is basically I think bringing up the standard for like merchandising and clothing across the board,
Hmm.
because I come from a space in music where you have to like be really competitive. You have to be at the top if you want to stand out. Um, and there's like a couple projects doing good stuff in the space, but the disparity between I think the real world standard for artists pushing things and what people are creating here, there's a bit of a gap. And that's also an exciting space where like I can keep learning and growing and trying new things
Right.
too.
Yeah.
Right. And
Absolutely.
being able to like do that hand in hand with, you know, communities and friends essentially, is the fun part of it. Because like what got me into music, well, sorry, what kept me in music was connecting with people on a real level, hanging out with them in their space and their friends and that sort of stuff. And I mean, long story short, the conclusion of the documentary is like, yep, these are real people too. Like,
I love it. Spoilers. I
right?
mean, I love it.
And they're 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 just normal people that like
Yeah.
do their washing and shit like that, and
Yeah. Yeah.
like, and but like I learned from that trip that I didn't want to make music because I wasn't in love with the process, but I found that I really loved the connection and helping people achieve what they wanted to achieve, was what I really valued. And so that's no different in this space. It's just kind of with clothes and stuff now. And so I'm trying to like, uh, you know, create new things and create new products rather than just decorate them, create
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
that's like, you know, custom manufacturing essentially, where like, you know, if you want to add some ribbing down here, or if you want to like put a stripe here or whatever you can, whereas
Yeah.
like a lot of that is restricted to people who have never touched this stuff. It's not restricted, it's like in terms of knowledge it's restricted because um it when you take off the if you like when you give full control over the product, you have to have full control over everything. And so um, there's a lot that can go wrong, but also you have the freedom to do whatever you want, right? And
Right.
so I kind of help mediate in between where we can use different things that I've developed out that are unique, but also consistent and tried and tested. But then the flexibility to create new things here and here. And
Love it.
there should be like a, you know, a certain product that you can expect to come out of it. Whereas I think a lot of people think merch is easy until they do merch. And then they realize that there's a million different things that they need an answer for, and they've never thought about it, and they have no idea where to start.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like that, you know, that's common with a lot of industries, right? From the outside looking in, it's like, oh, I could do that, you know, and then you try it,
Yeah,
and it's like, oh my gosh, what? I didn't know you have to do all of this. Like, yeah, no,
yeah,
totally.
exactly.
I'm sure it's even, you know, more with merch, just because like it seems like a simple thing, like you said, but it really ends up being like an art form. So like people who think like you can just upload an image to a computer and it'll just, you know, spit it out in
Yeah,
thread form, you know, they're misinformed.
exactly.
Yeah.
Like even down to like how the fabric that you use like changes the shape of the pattern that you're actually making. Like you could have two different 100% cotton fleeces, and you would need to downsize one of the patterns just because one's like more elastic or like floppy and stuff in nature. And a lot of that isn't, you can't write it down on paper. You can
Yeah.
only really experience it when you like you're feeling both of your options.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you have to be able to make that decision. Otherwise, you just spent X amount of money on making 200 hoodies and the sizes are all wrong. And
Yeah. Yeah.
it's like, okay, well, what do I do with them? So
Yeah, and it's
that's
and I
where,
love that you're like testing all of this as well, right? Like you know that perhaps something could go wrong because of these materials. So like, I mean,
yeah.
I have my hothead city here. I'm going to show it off real quick. I mean, it makes sense, right? Because owning this, like, I know it's of superior quality. Like the embroidery is incredible. Like the thought that went into like, you know, the jacket, and like everything is really really high quality. And so now hearing you talk about your thought process and all the testing that you do, it makes so much sense. I love this thing,
Yeah.
by the way. I wear it all the time. I get compliments on it
Thank you.
all the time. Like it's incredible.
Yeah, and I guess that's just how I work. Like, there's definitely people that make it work who are much more like jump in, head first, do it,
Yeah.
and see how it goes. And frustratingly, that like works a lot of
Works
the
sometimes.
time
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's where it is, that balance between like momentum and quality and stuff, and also meeting consumers with where they're at. Because just because what I see and what I value and my standards are here doesn't mean everyone else's is.
Totally.
And so it's about kind of like, I guess, matching the product to the consumer
Mhm.
and what they're, looking for and going to be happy with, really. There's
Agreed.
no point trying to sell, like a $200 hoodie to someone who's more than happy with like a, I don't know, $40 one,
Right. Right.
because they don't see the value and they're not going to pay for the value. Um, and that's fine. It's just your marketing is off.
Yeah.
Um, and it's kind of the same, the opposite way. If you try and sell a bunch of like cheap stuff
Just
to people
crap.
who
Yeah.
want to pay for quality, they're going to
Mhm.
be like, bro, like, this
Yeah.
isn't what I wanted, this isn't what I paid for,
Yeah.
so it's kind of about meeting different like groups and people with where they're at and what they're trying to like give to their holders and projects.
Yeah, it's such a balancing act, and I love that you have it. You know, I feel like you have it figured out for the most part, and a lot of people are gonna have to learn some hard lessons to like understand what it takes. Like this really perfect balance of more than just what we're talking about. There's a lot that goes into like figuring out like price points and how the
Mm,
quality and how much testing can you afford to do, right? Because like testing costs money
yeah,
too, and there's just so much that goes into it. And so I think you've got it figured out in a really great way, as I can, as attested by
I'm
this
trying my
amazing
best.
hoodie. Dude, you're doing a great job, dude. Because I have this one, I have my other Hotheads one. Diablo has his Watchers one. I mean, we're
Yeah,
fans. We love all your stuff. And like, I didn't even know you did jewelry. I'll talk to you about that offline. I might have to grab something. Like, I love it. You've got offerings as well. So I kind of want to go back a little bit and,
sure.
and dig into the timeline here, because I
Mhm,
think we're almost near the current, right, the present. So you were doing, right after school, you did this amazing dive into documentary making, and you created a documentary. And then after that, you got into custom streetwear, which is
mhm,
incredible. I'm on track. Yes. Very good, very good. So you were doing custom streetwear. Concurrently, you're getting interested in crypto and NFTs,
mhm,
and then you started transitioning into Solana NFTs, which is where you
mhm.
started doing NFT merchandise. Is that right?
That's
And
correct.
so,
Yeah.
okay, so you've done, again, incredible work for these one of one artists. I didn't know this, but you've done more than just like clothing. You've done jewelry as well. So we'll
Mhm,
have to talk about that further. But you've done all this, and I feel like it's kind of led you to this point to where you're like actually on a project team yourself,
mhm.
right? Because I think most of this has been like projects reaching out to you and saying, hey, can you do our merch? But you've never been, I don't believe, part of a project team before the Ape team. Is that right?
Yeah.
So all roads have led to now working at
Yeah.
Ape. You're still doing the one of one stuff as well. Is that correct?
Yep.
Incredible,
Yeah. I
incredible.
still have my previous partnerships in
You,
place.
right, right.
Obviously
More
until
hotheads are
like,
coming.
yeah, until those kind of those, because there's a hard cap on the collection, right?
Right.
Like, I think Hothead's 100, Xeno's
100.
like 64, that sort of stuff. Like,
Right.
and obviously until the the agreements in place are until the end of that. But a lot of
Mhm.
what I'm doing and working with them is obviously, hopefully, business can continue after that, but
Right.
in a different capacity.
Right, right.
But
Like you said, your offerings
still a
are
little bit away from that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, you're only increasing your offerings, which is incredible. So how did you get brought on to the Ape team? Was that who you were mentioning before? Did you say Xeno?
No, so
Different, right? Okay.
yeah, Xeno is known for his like pixel art and, I guess, monster friends. But he's known for, I
Oh,
think, a lot of different things because he's kind of the king of collaborating, and
oh,
also
cool.
he has a very unique style, and really. high work ethic, just
Dude,
really
you'll have to.
someone I really respect and like look to in the space.
Yeah, you'll have to connect me with him. Hopefully, I can bring him onto the pod. Love to chat.
Yeah. But I kind of came on to Just Ape just through different involvement with community members. I am almost done doing I guess a big project for the Chimpions, which is where I was kind of doing their merchandise package, but every one of the Chimpions was getting a custom hoodie. So I kind of took on the monolithic task of doing like 222 customs, as well as organizing stuff around the pack. It's not just the hoodies, it's essentially like a resin figure, a custom keycap like that goes on your keyboard, and like a necklace, and I think one other thing.
You're doing all. You're creating all of this.
Yeah, so like, well, like I'm not physically doing it, but I mean, like I've over the years built out different partnerships with like different manufacturing groups and stuff like that.
Sure.
And obviously like coordinating that and you know, controlling it essentially. So the second group that I actually got into in Solana was Famous Foxes, and that's where they were kind of the first group that I did a bunch of customs for, and they were really supportive of me in the space actually, and were very like helpful in getting my name out there to other projects and that sort of stuff. Somehow found myself on the Champions and came forward with an offering for like the merchandise package there. Again, like I was doing clothes at the time, but saw the potential and the interest in doing more and offering more, and that's where I was able to like there's only so much obviously you can do with just like sampling stuff out with you know, just for the sake of sampling stuff out with your own money. And so I did a lot of prep work in the other things that I was offering, and until the point I was confident, and then kind of did that for the first time in that merch package. And then that different players in Champions and stuff, because it's like a small tight-knit group, so everyone's very interactive and knows each other and that sort of stuff. So there was a lot of people. I pretty much knew like 90% of the Just Apes team, and was approached essentially to do merchandise on like on this scale.
Yeah, much larger scale than I think that the space has seen right so far. I mean, they've dedicated someone on their team to focus on merch, which is I think a really good move.
Like plenty of other a good handful of other groups trying to do it on this scale as well, but I'd kind of foreseen, I guess, how merch had gone for the previous 6 months, and there was a lot of problems, I would say, with the timing. I think everyone has waited like a long time for bulk produced stuff, which shouldn't take as long as it has, and people have gotten tripped up at different points. And I think the point they got tripped up the most at was the third-party logistics part, which is essentially like, we have 5,000 orders, how do we fulfill this? Now, like, that could take a week and a bit for a couple people to do if you know what you're doing, but a lot of these people have never set up like shipping systems or even printed shipping labels and stuff like that. So it's hard when you do know what you're doing. It takes time when you do know what you're doing, and it's even harder if you don't. So I hadn't really seen that successfully done in the space, and I'd been wanting to scale to the point of like working with a project for probably a few months, and had been spending that time developing out a system, because same thing with customs, there's kind of like a barrier entry, where it either costs a lot or they don't offer it because it's not worth their time. And I felt it was similar with logistics, companies. They basically say, yeah, it's going to be really expensive, or you need to send 500 packages a
Yeah,
month for us to
buy a
even
ton.
onboard you.
Right,
Right.
right.
And I was kind of like in this awkward middle ground where I was doing like, maybe 100 or so a month just
Right.
from like the customs and obligations, but not and running into problems where, okay, I need a certain type of label size so then I can use my thermal printer. It's way faster, all that sort of stuff. But no one would print on that size. But then if I wanted to get more help, I needed to do 5 times the volume,
Yeah.
So it got to the point I was like, I need to develop out a system for myself. And then I kind of essentially did. And that's where it kind of crossed over with being able to work with a team that was ready to deploy on kind of like a speed and scale that I hope can redefine a little bit of what people expect from the space, because right now
Yeah.
it's run off of pre-orders and mock-ups and stuff like that, and that's fine. But like, I think we can do better, and essentially at some point this space will catch up to the real world. And if we can have better merchandise all around, then I think that's a win for everyone. Like, I don't gatekeep this information. I'm not trying to like, be like, you suck, I'm good. Like, I, if I can help, other projects and stuff too, then I want it.
Incredible.
So that's kind of where we're at. Where we, obviously minted out a week ago and secured the funding to do the job that we've planned out to do, and that's what I'm doing. A lot of that was work that was kind of done prior to that, just because I'm aware of all of the timing of things and that sort of stuff, and making sure that the kind of the custom products that I would be offering were tried and tested, because I'm personally am not someone that like has the confidence to put out stuff without testing it first. I don't know, like I hold myself in a high regard in terms of like, when people are giving me money for stuff, I want to be confident in that I've fulfilled what they've paid for. So
As is evident with
that's
what
just
you've put out and what the stuff that I have.
yeah.
Excellent
So
quality.
it's hard for me to get caught up in just going sometimes, because it's important that I can back up my product, I guess. But that in turn means that I sometimes take it pretty personally when
I can imagine.
when I receive criticism or stuff like that. So I'm like, just want everyone to be happy.
Yeah. No, but I mean, I love that you've got such a passion for this and that you care, right? I feel like a lot of people, especially when you start to scale, like you just get kind of cold, like feedback's feedback, like whatever, like but the fact that you still kind of take stuff to heart. IMO is a good thing, right? Obviously, it's probably not good for your mental health, so apologies there. But no, it's good to hear that you're still really keen on getting positive feedback and trying to provide the quality for the value that you're getting. I think that's excellent. Once people start losing sight of that, or it's not top of mind anymore, I think you can see it, right? Like, and so a lot of like projects or like companies or whatever, like eventually it starts to slip and it's like, oh no, this is not a good thing. And so I love that even now into your journey, it's still, you're still keen on producing quality and making sure that, people are getting their money's worth.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, like I try and separate it a little bit and try not to take it so personally, because the more you scale, and again, same in music, same in streetwear and whatever, the more you scale, like there's always going to be people that are unhappy or don't like what you're doing, and that's just because you can't make a product that everyone likes.
Of course.
And that's okay. And you just like, I don't know, keep doing your thing, keep having fun with it, and keep trying your best, and you can that, like, what you've done, what you've worked on and how much you tried and that sort of stuff. And hopefully you
Totally.
can be confident in yourself and in what you've put together. So
Yeah. Just going back to like my restaurant experience. I mean, there's like a difference, right, between like this food didn't come out well and I didn't like this dish. Right? It's two different things. So as long as you're confident knowing that I prepared this well, a person may or may not like it, but I know I've prepared it to the standard that it's supposed to be prepared. It's a different thing, and so
yeah,
hopefully,
100%.
again, for your mental health, you're distinguishing it. It sounds like you are, but I know that can get draining.
Trying.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. Incredible. So I love it, man. I'm really keen and excited to see what you do with the Just Ape team. Again, I don't think, like you said, the space hasn't seen something like this on this scale at this level of quality yet, right? It's a new space. So I love that, like, it's top of mind for you to set this precedent, and you're willing to help other people learn, other projects learn. Like, you're moving the space forward, which is so important, right? Like, a lot of people are kind of in this space for themselves and get out of it what they can and just kind of bounce. But you're like keen on moving the space forward, and I love that. That's really important, and I love to hear that you're thinking about it. We're getting close to, where are we? Oh, we're a little over time. So I want to thank you for the time. Once this comes out, I'm sure people are going to be keen on your other offerings, keen on some of these one-on-one projects that we've talked about, and then especially keen on seeing what's going to happen with the Just Ape merchandising. I knew, like, we were messaging, like, I knew you're an impressive dude, but like, I'm mind blown, like the level
Thank you.
of bullish that I am on you and what you're going to do in the space. And maybe eventually you'll do your own NFT project, and that's going to do great as well. Just like, you have the mindset, right? It's totally a mindset thing to, like, you're going to put out quality, right? And so,
Thank
like,
you.
I feel
Thank
like
you.
whatever you end up doing, it's going to be incredible. Luckily, I've got you in the DM, so I'll I'll hit you up as soon as I hear about more stuff coming out.
No, thanks for having me on. Good.
Absolutely. I'm going to hopefully bring you back pretty soon. It sounds like you've got some exciting things coming up. So once some of that stuff comes out, we'll have you back. Thank you so much, man, for your time. This is the longest one we've done so far. So I appreciate you entertaining me for this time, and
No worries.
I'm sure the audience is gonna get a kick out of learning about you a little bit more.
I hope so. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Take care. And again, guys, join us next week. We're posting these pods weekly. I don't know if I've ever mentioned that before, but Eden Hour podcast will be weekly. So join us next week for another episode. Thank you, guys.